Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at a machine that didn't just participate in the golden age of motorsport, it entirely rewrote its DNA. I mean, we are stepping back exactly a century to the debut of a car that completely transformed how vehicle design and engineering were even perceived. It's this incredible story of unrestrained genius, mechanical beauty, and an astonishing level of absolute dominance on the track that has, arguably, never been matched.
Consider this staggering statistic for a second. 2,500. The Bugatti Type 35 secured over 2,500 race victories during its active run. To really put that into perspective, at the absolute height of its power, this single model of car was averaging 14 race wins every single week across the globe. From Grand Prix circuits to those grueling hill climbs, it just swept everything before it.
Section 1. The Ultimate Racing Legend.
So back in 1924 at the French Grand Prix held in Lyon, the Bugatti Type 35 makes its grand debut. Now, while its very first outing had some challenges, largely due to some badly vulcanized tires, it immediately signaled the birth of the Grand Prix era. Bugatti heritage expert Luigi Galli actually describes the Type 35 as the world's first purpose-designed and engineered race car. Because, before 1924, if you wanted to go racing, you generally just took a road car and modified it. But the Type 35, it represented a massive paradigm shift. It was conceived holistically from the ground up to do exactly one thing: race and win.
Section 2. Engineering without constraints.
You see, because Ettore Bugatti lacked formal automotive engineering training, his mind was completely unrestrained by the traditional conventions of the time. While typical race cars of the 1920s literally towered high above the ground with these completely exposed rear suspension systems, Bugatti's Type 35 sat incredibly low and sleek. The suspension wasn't just left out in the open, it was neatly encapsulated within the aluminum alloy. This heavily contributed to a really aerodynamic, low-drag profile, well before aerodynamics was even a fully understood science.
Section 3. Anatomy of an Icon.
Let's dive into the details, because every single piece underneath the body of this open-top two-seater was engineered with intense precision. Nothing was left to chance, and almost everything represented a new, higher form of mechanical thinking. The beating heart of the Type 35 was a groundbreaking 2.0-liter straight-eight engine featuring a thin-walled 24-valve design. But the real secret sauce, that was its sophisticated bearing system. By utilizing an aluminum crankshaft supported by 2 roller bearings and 3 ball bearings, this engine could safely rev all the way up to 6,000 RPM, delivering a class-leading 90 horsepower right out of the gate.
But hey, horsepower means very little if your car's too heavy, right? And Ettore Bugatti was absolutely obsessed with removing weight without sacrificing reliability. Through meticulous engineering of literally every component, the entire vehicle's weight was brought down to a mere 750 kilograms. That exceptional power-to-weight ratio is exactly what gave the Type 35 its unprecedented agility.
A truly defining innovation of this vehicle was its cast alloy wheels. The Type 35 was the very first to ever use them. While the rest of the racing world was stuck using heavy, standard wire-spoked wheels, Bugatti's cast alloys dramatically reduced unsprung mass. Plus, they ingeniously mounted the brake drum integrally into the wheel itself, which allowed for vastly improved driver response and cooling. Just brilliant.
Another fantastic example of this weight-saving obsession was the hollow front axle with sealed ends. But it wasn't just hollow, it was a packaging marvel. Instead of simply U-bolting the springs together, which was totally the standard practice back then, Bugatti passed the semi-elliptical leaf springs directly through the front axle. This kept the car's ride height incredibly low, while seriously improving handling dynamics.
Section 4. Evolution of the Type 35.
Now, the Type 35 was definitely not a static creation. Over the late 1920s, it evolved into an entire ecosystem of vehicles to adapt to shifting Grand Prix regulations and the specific needs of privateer racers who are buying these cars directly from the Molsheim factory. The lineup expanded pretty significantly. Beyond the original 2.0-liter naturally aspirated Type 35, the Type 35C integrated a root supercharger to bump output to nearly 135 horsepower. The Type 35B pushed this even further with a larger 2.3-liter supercharged engine. And for privateers wanting slightly easier maintenance, there was the Type 37, which utilized a smaller 1.5-liter four-cylinder engine but still kept that same legendary chassis and bodywork. Fascinatingly enough, there was also the Type 35A. Introduced in 1925, this one was intended primarily for road use but maintained that aggressive racing look. It used simpler, plain bearings on the crankshaft rather than the complex roller bearings. The public affectionately nicknamed it the Tekla, after a famous maker of imitation jewelry, kind of a playful nod to it being a beautiful but slightly less intense replica of the full Grand Prix version.
Section 5. Conquering the racetrack. The late 1920s truly marked a golden era of racing dominance for this car. Following its 1924 debut, by 1926 the Type 35 had secured the Grand Prix World Championship. In 1928, out of 26 top-flight international races held that year, Bugatti drivers took first place in an astonishing 23 of them. By 1929, the car was cementing its legacy at the very first Monaco Grand Prix.
And perhaps nothing proves the ruggedness of the Type 35 quite like the Targa Florio. This was a grueling, totally unforgiving road race through the treacherous mountains of Sicily. From 1925 through 1929, Bugatti won this brutal endurance test for an unprecedented 5 consecutive years. Just wild.
One of the most thrilling and unique victories took place right on the beach on France's west coast. Picture this. In 1927, at the Grand Prix de la Baule, British driver Captain George Easton piloted his Type 35B right across the sand, literally racing against the incoming tide of the Atlantic Ocean, and he won the event by more than 6 minutes.
The car also empowered some of the absolute greatest pioneers of the sport. At that incredibly challenging 1928 Targa Florio, motor racing pioneer Elizabeth Junet took the wheel of her Type 35B. Navigating those winding Sicilian mountain roads against the toughest competitors of the era, she fearlessly drove her Bugatti to a spectacular 5th-place finish.
And we absolutely cannot talk about the Type 35 without mentioning the streets of Monaco. In 1929, at the inaugural Monaco Grand Prix, British driver William Grover Williams navigated the tight, demanding city circuit in a stunning British Racing Green Type 35B. He took the checkered flag, claiming a 100,000 French franc prize, and effectively etching both his name and the car's into motorsport history forever.
Section 6. Current status and legacy.
You know, when a car alters the landscape of an industry this profoundly, its echoes don't just fade away when it retires from professional competition. From 1924 to 2024, the impact of the Type 35 has remained totally central to Bugatti. The meticulous design, the heavy focus on lightweight materials, and the uncompromising pursuit of performance, they all still form the absolute core DNA of modern Bugatti vehicles today. But even more incredibly, the Type 35 isn't just sitting behind velvet ropes in some quiet museum. A full century later, original models are still being actively raced in historic hill climbs and circuits by enthusiasts all around the world.
Which leaves us with this final thought to consider. How did one mind, Ettore Bugatti, a man entirely unrestrained by the traditional engineering rules of his day, manage to conceptualize the machine so perfect that its legacy remains untouchable a full 100 years later? It really forces us to ask what we could achieve if we stopped looking at the way things have always been done and started designing for the pure, uncompromised pursuit of perfection. Thank you for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.